That's the app.
Visitor Network TV.
Right.
.com.
No, just Visitor Network. No, you go and get
Go to
the
the App Store.
Oh, I have. All right. So
Yep.
it'll take too much time to do that.
But
I will do that.
But that's how you'll see it, and you'll be in that zone. Okay, right now that's this is what's live on TV right now. That's what's happening on the television channel here in Nantucket.
Okay.
So wherever you are in the world, you can just tune it in.
Okay. Well, I hope I look
You
reasonable.
look great, Beverly.
All right. This was not planned.
Of course not. We love it
Because he
that
looks
way.
wonderful. He knew he was being interviewed.
Yes, I had a heads up.
So,
You're
yeah,
more
okay.
than happy to listen in to
Well,
John.
I think they've probably
Okay.
had
Well,
enough
then
of all
watch
of
it on
the
TV when
debate.
you watch yourself.
I
You see
will do
John
that.
there.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Good luck.
John.
Beverly,
Pleasure.
enjoy.
Enjoy,
Nice
too.
meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
Hey, John. That's a nice way, isn't it? We
Yes.
like serendipity, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Now, we've got you on TV talking about another issue. We're not even going
Yes.
to touch that. You did a fine job with Dan Drake
Thank you.
talking about that. But what I want to talk to you about, you are a writer and a traveler,
Yes.
but you've written this book. Can you tell me about it?
40 years after I returned from Vietnam, I was finally ready to write down my thoughts about the experience. But, you know, in your 60s, it's so different from being in your 20s. In my 20s, I just had these experiences and they overwhelmed me, and I didn't really know what to think about them. By the time I was in my 60s, I had actually sort of learned some lessons from the experience. So that's what I decided to write about. War Lessons is the title, and it was what I learned from being a soldier and what I learned from traveling back to Vietnam nearly every year for the last 20 years. And I'd seen a country recover from war, I'd seen a country at war, I'd seen a country recover from war, and seen life get much better for most people there, which has left the Vietnamese people very optimistic. They've seen in their lifetime such great improvements
Isn't that amazing?
that they're optimistic about the future, even though from an absolute standpoint, the standard of living is fairly low. Incomes are fairly low for most people. But they've seen life get so much better.
Let me go back in time a
Yeah.
little bit. Why is it, John, that it took this many years for you to write this book? You said, finally in my 60s I could write it. Why couldn't you do it? I mean, there's a big span between 20s and 60s.
Yes, there is. I used to say to the guys in my platoon, this is 1966, 67, someday we're all going to come back here. When the war's over, we're going to want to see this great country. We know it's beautiful. We know how wonderful these people are. They're nice to us when they have no reason to be. We're making their lives miserable. And we're going to want to come back here and see what it's like when things are better. And they would say, Merson, you're blank crazy. If we ever get out of here, we're never coming back. And I came home and nobody wanted to hear about the war. It was such a bad dream for America. Though nobody asked, and I learned not to volunteer. But 28 years after I left, the U.S. finally reestablished diplomatic relations with Vietnam. And then I went back.
What was it like in those 28 years for you, though? I think you must have been, you remembered those words, but you waited 28 years. Did it take the normalization of relations for you to finally say, I can go back now?
It was more than that. I came back from Vietnam a very angry person. I had all this rage inside of me. It was like I left the war, but the war didn't leave me. So I was sitting on all this anger, and it took the end of my first marriage, 5 years of therapy, remarrying, raising a son, having my life finally get less angry.
Yep.
And then I wanted to go back. I felt like I could go back and see where I had been and not be overwhelmed by it. though I was apprehensive the first time I went back.
So is the book a? How would you describe the book?
It's a memoir.
It's a memoir.
Memoir.
Do you actually talk about combat? I mean,
Yes.
you were a foot soldier? You
Yes.
said?
Marine, infantry,
Unreal.
scout, team leader in Central Vietnam.
Wow.
And the first half of the book is about the experiences I had as a foot soldier and the people I lived with. And I was never on a military base. We just went from village to village, from hill to hill, throughout the countryside. So I never really saw what I'm able to see now in modern Vietnam. But I wrote about the people I lived with. My platoon
Marines?
commander.
Yeah.
My platoon commander, my corpsman, the guys in my team. In fact, just the day before yesterday, I had an email, and this is what happens when you write a book. John, Mike Tobin here. I was your hospital corpsman. He was Doc, you know. When you got wounded, it was corpsman up, medic, Doc, please. And so he's writing from across the span of 40 years saying, here I am. And I had tried to find this guy using the internet. I'd been trying to find him for a very long time. And finally, he just shows up in my inbox, and we've started a new conversation. But I think at a certain point in my life, I was ready to do that. And I began hunting down as many of the people in my platoon as I could. Talking with them on the phone sometimes, or just email, whatever.
Are many still around?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did many go back?
I haven't met anyone yet,
Unreal.
anyone else who's gone back.
I was there a few years ago, and I did see guys there, and
Yes.
I knew they were them. You can tell.
Yes.
It's just you can tell when you
It's-
see them. They're together usually. There's usually two of them together that I noticed.
Yes.
And
Yeah, they
it
don't
was
go back
intense.
alone.
It was an intense thing to see.
Well,
So tell us, go on about your feelings about it in returning, and what that gave you, or
well, first I got a chance to see the rest of the country. Hanoi, Saigon, the cities. I'm seeing tremendous development.
were you worried though before when you got there that, hey, you know, these people are not going to want me here?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was very apprehensive, and I thought I would encounter a lot of anger, you know, because I knew what we had done to their country. We brought the war to them, and they didn't deserve that. So we had a lot to apologize for. And I actually got a chance to do that after my book came out in English in the U.S. From
What did it was written
2000, it was published in 2008
not in English?
in English.
Oh, in English.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
by Random House and North Atlantic Books. And then a Vietnamese publisher approached my publisher and said, we've read this book and we'd like to bring out a Vietnamese version. We think Vietnamese people would like to hear this story. And there had never been a book by an American veteran published in Vietnamese. Plenty of books by Vietnamese veterans, not by an American. So I found a young man in Hanoi, a recent university graduate. He did the translation. Like the English language version, the royalties go to clear landmines in central Vietnam.
Nice.
And so I got to go on book tour in Vietnam. And I was on radio programs and TV shows. And on one TV show, there was a studio audience of university students, most of whom spoke very good English. This one young woman stood up and she said, why did you come to fight in our country? What did we have that you wanted? And I thought, you know, that's such a practical question. But I understood that she really had no clue that it didn't make sense to her that her country and the U.S. could have been at war with each other. Because to her, Vietnam is Madonna, Lady Gaga, Bill Gates, Google,
Was she young or old?
Yes, I would say she was about 20.
Okay.
She was the age that
Right.
I was when I went there as a
Right.
soldier. So I said, I wanted to be a hero. I thought it would make me a stronger person. Like most people in my platoon, I had a personal reason for being there. We weren't there out of patriotism. I didn't meet any patriots the whole time I was a soldier in Vietnam. Guys wanted to get out of the house, out of the neighborhood, into a job. And in the 60s, if you were from Detroit or Philadelphia or Chicago, the jobs were at the recruiting center. And it was a chance for a
Did
better
you-
opportunity.
Did you volunteer?
Yes.
Oh, really?
But you know, once we got
I
there,
thought most everybody.
no.
No.
The draftees were a minority
Okay.
among the foot soldiers.
All right.
But a lot of people volunteered in quotes. They got in trouble with the law, and the judge said, look, you can go to jail or you can join the Navy or whatever.
Right.
And people thought about that for a nanosecond and said, I think I'll join the military. But for many people, it really was a source of opportunity. And you know, I interviewed Kevin Powers here this year during the book festival. He wrote The Yellow Birds, probably the best novel to come out of the Iraq War. And he described graduating from high school at the age of 17, having been an indifferent student, didn't see a way to get to college, joined the Army, spent 4 years in the Army, including his time in Iraq, and came back and got a chance to go to college on the GI Bill, and eventually on to a master's program in creative writing, during which he wrote this marvelous novel, The Yellow Birds. So the same thing is happening today. People are seeing the military as a source of opportunity. And that's what it was for most of the people in my platoon.
So that would be the answer that you would have given her. It was an opportunity
I gave
to
her-
prove myself and to be.
I gave her that answer, and I could tell it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
She paused. She waited for me to say more. And I said, and I apologize to you for the suffering and destruction that I caused in your country. And she smiled and said, okay. And she sat down. It's like, okay, we can go on from that. And that's really what I found among the Vietnamese people. As bad as things were, and as much suffering as we caused, they've seen their lives get better, and they're looking forward.
Yeah.
So they don't have time to be angry about the things that happened in the past.
Yeah. Amazing country. They're
it-
one of our biggest allies in Southeast Asia.
And I think the fact that it's a Buddhist country counts for a
I
lot.
do too.
The ability to absorb great suffering and still look
I love,
forward.
I love Asia. I'm always thinking about it. I like the way Asians drive. How about the way they drive? There's no road rage in Asia.
Well, I
Rarely.
actually saw road rage in Vietnam. Most
Did
of
you?
the vehicles were bicycles, of course,
Right,
when I
right,
first got there.
right.
Now most vehicles are Honda Dream scooters.
Right.
But
Boy,
this
is
is
the pollution bad in Hanoi too.
but this is what road rage
Yeah.
looks like in Vietnam. To yell at somebody, to scream, to attack them is to lose face. The most you would do if you're really angry at someone is this. And then you turn and get on with your business. So I feel like there was this phenomenon that I saw many times, a six-way intersection. Bicycles, motorbikes, an occasional car entering the intersection from 6 different directions. No traffic lights, no traffic cop, and somehow people move through each other and go in the direction they want to go. I called it the blend, the ability of people to just sort of move through each other. And I thought, there's got to be something cultural about that. How can they do that without bumping into each other, getting angry, having accidents, falling over? So I rented a bicycle in Ho Chi Minh City, and I rode for a couple hours outside of the city, and then I came back into the city, and I went to that 6-way intersection.
Yeah.
and I stopped in the very middle of the intersection and took pictures in 360 degrees, just trying to photograph the blend. And I was an obstacle in the middle of the intersection. People came up to me, went a little bit this way or a little bit this way, and went on. It was sort of like the piece of sand in the oyster. It's absorbed by the oyster and life goes on. So it's become my favorite country. I look forward to my trips there each year.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of friends there.
Do you go for your book tour, or do you just go to vacation now and enjoy?
Well, now every time I go, my Vietnamese publisher, Tai Ha Books, usually arranges an event or two for me. Or I just stop by and visit with them at their audience, at their offices.
Yeah.
They'll arrange a little meeting or something like that. But to see this sort of optimistic spirit that's driving the progress that Vietnam is making is really gratifying. And I think especially when you've been part of the bad times, it's even more, it's a renewing experience to see that.
Let me ask you this before we go. Your buddies that you've been keeping in contact with, they know you, they've probably read your book, or they know of it. Do you talk to them often?
Occasionally, when I can.
Do you ever say to them, listen, you got to go back?
I would never say that to
No.
anybody. Everybody has to make his own choice about that. A good friend in our platoon became a playwright. He's written several very successful plays about the people in our platoon, not even changing the names. And I know he's one of those who would never go back. He was wounded several times, has a drawer full of Purple Hearts. It would just be too big a hill to climb for him. It's something that people will do if they want to, and if they feel it would be a healing experience for them. But if they think it's going to be just a downer, just a sort of a renewal of post-traumatic stress, they're not going to do it. So I wouldn't advise anybody on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, listen, thanks, John. What's the name of your book again for this?
War Lessons,
War Lessons.
and it's available in the bookstores here. So,
Good. Thanks, John.
thank you.